you were to give me an idea for a movie that could take place in Houston, what would it be, do you think? What could you tell me about your community that might be interesting to see in a movie? What about the canning factory? Would that be fun? A story about a canning
train station.
train station. Well, what about could a person get caught in a can? Could that happen? I think, what is it, Pete? Pete, what do you think? I remembered his name. Pete, did you ever work at the canning factory? Sure. You did? Marvelous. So it's about putting things in cans and closing it up, right? Vegetables. Oh, corn. Yes, corn. Oh, we have some more people from Illinois. Well, I guess that's appropriate because this is Houston, Illinois.
Mr. Disney, I think all of your guests have arrived.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Have a big round of applause for Alex. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lorraine Theater here in Houston, Illinois. I'm Walt Disney. We had the world premiere of Song of the South, our most current feature-length film, this past November in Atlanta, Georgia. It opened earlier today in Argentina. That's right. It's scheduled for showing at the Lorraine this coming spring. The Walt Disney Studio is known for film animation, of course. Song of the South is another attempt of ours to feature live action in our movies. You know, we've had live action in several of our films, including Fantasia and The Reluctant Dragon, and also The Three Caballeros. Now, I've always had a conviction that by combining live actors with cartoons, I could make the technique of filmmaking practically limitless. You see, I've always believed that the world is half actual and half fantasy. The dream world can't be photographed with real people, nor can cartoons give the impression of reality. So why not put them together? Now, Song of the South is set on a southern plantation, and it's set in the time right after the period at the end of the Civil War, the American Civil War. It features Uncle Remus, you know, the character made famous by the popular Tales of Uncle Remus by Joel Chandler Harris. You know, my wife Lily, she's been nagging me lately a lot. She wants me to write a book about my how I started in the business of film animation, and I've been jotting down memories as I remember them. So I thought I would tell you how I got started. You know, how I got to be where I am today. Today, December 19th, 1946. Can you believe it? In a couple of weeks, it's going to be 1947. Boy, how time flies. Well, let's see. Oh, yes. I'll start at the beginning. On New Year's Day, 1888. Elias Disney and Flora Call, my parents, were married. Over the next 5 years, 3 sons were added to our family. Herbert in 1888, Raymond in 1890, and Roy in 1893. By the time my mother became pregnant again, some 8 years later, my parents were living in Chicago, where Dad was making a living as a carpenter and builder. On December 5, 1901, a 4th child, Walter Elias Disney, was born. And well, that was me. I was named after my family's pastor. The pastor, in turn, named his son Elias after my father. 2 years later, a little girl, Ruth, arrived, and the Disney family was complete. My memories of the farm are almost entirely favorable, with the possible exception of the time I got into deep trouble for doodling on the barn with black sticky tar. Family members were ever present in my young life, including Grandma and Uncle Mike, who was a railroad engineer. Uncle Mike would come roaring into town behind the throttle of a giant locomotive, carrying striped bags of candy for all of us kids. Well, Aunt Margaret, Uncle Robert's wife, she would bring me these big tablets and Crayola things, and I'd always draw her pictures, and she'd always rave over them. In 1908, my brothers Herbert and Raymond, they decided they'd had enough of farming, and they departed for better times in Chicago. In the fall of 1909, I started at the brand new Park School in Marceline, but I wasn't to be there long. In the fall of 1910, my brother Roy, he contracted typhoid and almost died. He recovered slowly, but my father knew he couldn't keep the farm afloat, so it was sold, and the family moved to Kansas City In the summer of 1911, paradise was lost. So dear to my heart, that September-y day, with the leaves turning brown and gold, when you were the dream I would hold, so dear to my heart. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I meant to tell you, well, I heard this morning I've got a bit of an emergency back in LA, and I've got to make this call right now. I hope you don't mind. It will be very brief. That's why they put the phone here. I'm going to call Charlie. And one moment. Still with me? Hey, Charlie. Hi. Yes, it's Walt. Yes, how you doing? I heard. Yes, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? That's good to hear. Now listen. What? Song of the South, yes, it's a great film, one of our best. Now, what? Oh, no, I haven't heard from them. What? They're offended? They say slavery looks like, well, Charlie, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, slaves must have, well, they weren't miserable all the time, you know. They must have told some jokes and sang some happy songs sometimes. Listen, Charlie, Song of the South is set in the period right after the end of the Civil War. Slaves have all been freed by this time. What? Yes, they're still on the plantation. I don't believe it. Listen, Charlie, I'm going to have to get back to you, okay? No, I'm going to have to get back to you later, okay? All right, I'll do that. That's right. Yes. Sorry, folks, sorry. It's just make believe that never happened, okay? It was just a little bit of an emergency there. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. Kansas City. In Kansas City, my father bought a newspaper route. My brother Roy and I were his staff, and he imbued in us a drive for perfectionism. I rose at 3:30 in the morning and was required to place every paper behind the customer's storm door, not out on the lawn like other newsboys. Well, in winter, crawling up icy steps, carrying heavy bags of papers more than once drove me to cold tears. As a result, my schooling was characterized by unsuccessful attempts to stay awake. Occasionally, though, I'd surprise my teachers. One day in 5th grade, I came to school dressed as Abraham Lincoln, and I performed the Gettysburg Address for every class in the school that day. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Slavery. Plantation. Excuse me, please. Oh, yes, here. Now, you know, at this time, I started drawing my own versions of Maggie and Jiggs. Well, that fall, I was back in school, but my mind was thousands of miles away on the battlefields of Europe. I wanted to be part of the war to end all wars. But in the meantime, I attended classes at the Chicago Art Institute. I worked at the Ozell Company, and I drew patriotic sketches for my high school's newspaper. When school let out the following summer, I began to work at the post office, where I narrowly escaped an untimely end when the building was bombed. And then when I heard, in the summer of 1918, well, I was 16 at that time, too young for the military, but when I heard that the Red Cross Ambulance Corps would accept 17-year-olds, I lied about my age, joined, and began training. But I almost missed my chance when I came down with influenza, in an epidemic that killed about 20 million people worldwide that year, 1918. Well, the war ended, but the ambulance corps still needed 50 more men, and I was the 50th selected. I was on my way to France. For the next year, I drove an ambulance, chauffeured officers, played poker, started smoking, and I wrote letters. I made money with another guy. We painted helmets camouflage colors and banged them up to look battle-scarred, and then we sold them to Americans in search of realistic souvenirs from over there. Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't be back till it's over there. And that's just what we did. We didn't come back till it was over there. You can't help but sing that song when you think back to those days. That's a great song. Well, when I returned home from France in the fall of 1919, I was determined to become an artist. Oh, sorry. In 1921, Herbert, Ruth, my sister, and my parents moved to Portland, Oregon. Then Roy came down with tuberculosis and went to a hospital in Arizona. All alone, I found a place in a rooming house and threw myself entirely into cartooning. Before ours could be completed, I had to declare bankruptcy. So with the unfinished film in hand, I sold my camera and I purchased a train ticket to California. Here I come, leaving where I started from, where bowers of flowers bloom in the sun. Each morning at dawning, birdies sing, and everything a sun-kissed miss said, "Don't be late." That's why I can hardly wait. Open up that golden gate, California, here I come. When I arrived in Hollywood, I got a job as an extra in a Western. But it rained the day my scene was to be filmed, and the studio replaced me. That was the end of my career as an actor. So anyway, I turned to my one real skill, animation. Now, I knew I didn't have a sterling record in running the financial side of things, so I convinced my brother Roy to join me in California as a partner in my new business. And that may have been the best single decision of my career. I was now free to let my imagination run wild, while Roy made sure we both had enough money to eat. We bought a used camera, rented a tiny studio in the back of a real estate office, moved into a one-room apartment together, and hired a couple of art assistants. Well, it was at this time that I fell in love. This can't be love because I feel so well. No sobs, no sorrows, no sighs. This can't be love, I get no dizzy spell. My head is not in the sky. My heart does not stand still, just feel it beat. This is too sweet to be love. This can't be love because I feel so well, but still I love to look in your eyes. Don't tell Lily I did that. Yeah, well, I guess this is the kind of day when you can't open your mouth without a song jumping right out of it. Well, one of the art assistants we hired was a young woman named Lillian Marie Bounds. She was a very good ink artist. At night, I would drive Lillian and the other assistant home in a used pickup truck that Roy and I had bought. I always dropped the other woman off first. I loved listening to Lillian's tales about her life as the youngest of 10 children of a blacksmith. After a while, we began taking long drives, talking all the time. But I never accepted Lillian's invitations to meet her family. Not until I saved up enough money for a new suit was I willing to be introduced. Roy and I, meanwhile, well, we were getting sick and tired of each other, and as roommates. So then, in 1925, Roy asked his longtime girlfriend, Edna Francis, to marry him. And on June 13th that same year, Lily and I got married. Lily, as I have always called her, well, she quickly came to understand that she wasn't the only love in my life. We'd spend a pleasant evening out together with family or friends, and eventually I would announce, "I've just got one little thing I want to do at the studio." Next thing Lily would know, she was being awakened in the middle of the night, on the office couch in the middle of the night. I'd been working for hours, and it was finally time to go home. Anyway, when the popularity of the Alice series began to wane, I started to work on a new character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Lavender blue, dilly dilly, lavender green. If I were king, dilly dilly, I'd need a queen. Who told me so, dilly dilly, who told me so? I told myself, dilly dilly, I told me so. Lavender blue, dilly dilly, lavender green. Then I'll be king, dilly dilly, and you'll be my queen. It may have been my staff and I who turned Oswald into a star, but Mintz and Universal held the star's contract. Mintz demanded that I give up my own business and work exclusively for him. I refused. So, I left New York without most of my staff and without Oswald. I sent Roy a telegram. Leaving tonight, stopping over KC. Arrive home Sunday morning, 7:30. Don't worry, everything okay. We'll give details when arrived, Walt. And that's a telegram. But while I was trying to protect my brother from the real story, it would appear that my mind was already working on a way to make the telegram true by the time I arrived home. I knew that I had to come up with a new character. And so, I dreamed up the idea of Mickey Mouse on the way home. At first, I thought I'd call my new creation Mortimer. But Lily didn't like that name. How about Mickey? She asked. And as hundreds of millions of fans now know, I took her advice. And I'll meet her there, mid that fragrance rare. Sing to her this melody. Oh, the old tomcat with his meow, meow, meow. Old hound dog with his bow, wow, wow. The crow's caw, caw, and the mule's ee-haw. Gosh, what a racket like an old buzzsaw. I have listened to the cuckoo, cuckoo's cuckoo. And I've heard the rooster cock his doodle-doo-doo. With the cows and the chickens, they all sound like the dickens. When I hear my little minnies, yoo-hoo. Now, we all love this song, and we used it many times under the opening credits of many of Mickey's early cartoons. Now, though business was booming, checks from Pat Powers were smaller than anticipated, and they arrived erratically. In late 1929, Roy visited Powers and came to one definite conclusion. That Powers is a crook. He's a definite crook. Oh, I defended Powers at first. You don't believe in people, Roy. Of course, Roy was right. Powers had been withholding money from us, and finally he announced his intention to take over the Disney studio. His ace in the hole? He had seduced Iwerks, my star animator, into jumping ship in exchange for a cartoon series of his own. Powers had decided that was really the secret to our success. I was terribly disappointed, but I didn't consider yielding. And the studio went on without Three Little Pigs, which was a challenge in character development and a big hit for us with the popular song, and sing along if you'd like. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Tra-la-la-la-la. Now I'm sure you could all sing tra-la-la-la-la. Right? Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Tra-la-la-la-la. Come on. Who's afraid? No. I love children, but much to our dismay, our first two pregnancies, they ended in miscarriages. And then, well, I'll tell you, in 1931, I had a hell of a breakdown. I went all to pieces. It was just that, I just cracked up. I just got very irritable. I got to the point I couldn't talk on the telephone. I began to cry. I had to go away. Lily and I took a long trip. We got away from everyone and everything. The third time around, I remember I wrote to my mother, Lily is partial to a baby girl. I personally don't care, just as long as we do not get disappointed again. And we weren't. On December 18, 1933, Diane Marie Disney was born. Well, weeks before Diane was born, I remember I wrote my mother, I've made a lot of vows that my kid won't be spoiled, but I doubt it. It may turn out to be the most spoiled brat in the country. My initial tendency was to surround my daughter with toys and games. Christmas of 1934 featured a giant tree and a sea of presents. But true to my vow, I didn't spoil her. I realized after a time that the more you want things, the better you like them. I wanted more children, and when Lily suffered another miscarriage, we decided to adopt. In January 1937, 2-week-old Sharon May Disney entered into our family. Baby mine, don't you cry. Baby mine, dry your eyes. Rest your head close to my heart, never to part. Baby of mine, little one, when you play, don't you mind what they say. Let those eyes sparkle and shine. Never a tear, baby of mine. When I decided to create the world's first feature-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, virtually everyone thought I was headed down the wrong path. Roy and Lily were unhappy. With Mickey Mouse and the Silly Symphonies doing well, we had plenty of money. Why gamble? After all, a feature-length cartoon was estimated to cost at least $500,000. My wife and brother weren't alone, though. Others in the entertainment business thought I was foolhardy, too. They didn't think I could come up with a storyline that would hold people's attention for over an hour of animation. They thought that such a cartoon would hurt audiences' eyes. They called the venture Disney's Folly. Of course, I listened to none of this. I knew that movie houses, they were no longer showing as many cartoons as they once did, a casualty of increasingly common double features, which left less time for animated shorts. What's more, my competitors were coming on strong with cartoons like Popeye. You know Popeye, right? You do? You do, Ashley? Yes, Popeye. Well, not as good as Mickey. But they rivaled Mickey Mouse in popularity. I knew if we wanted to get anywhere, we'd have to go beyond the short subject. The selection of Snow White was carefully thought out. I had the sympathetic dwarfs, I had the heavy, I had the prince, and the girl. The romance, I thought it was perfect. One evening, in fact, I acted out the entire story for my staff, all by myself. And here, I'll try to give you a feeling for what happened that night. All right, everybody, listen up. The film begins with a close-up of a storybook, and we hear a song being played on the soundtrack. Or something like that. Now, it is with a long shot, everyone, get this, a long shot of the Queen's castle that the action begins as the majestic lady, proud and vain, approaches her magic mirror to ask, as she always does, who is the fairest of them all? Now, at this point, the picture, everyone listening, the picture dissolves to our first scene of Snow White, doing her work with the garden birds fluttering all about her. She sings with an echo from the well, duplicating her voice. Now, do you get this idea? Do you get it? That the echo in the well should sing back to her, sing of her longing. I'm wishing for the one I love to find me today, today. La la sing. La la la. I'm hoping that the one I love will find me today. Now, the Queen has sent for her huntsman, ordering him to take Snow White to the forest that afternoon and slay her. You must bring back her heart in order to prove that the deed has been done. She turns to see the huntsman's gleaming hunting knife. Run, flee, escape from the power of the evil Queen. Now, this can be a very exciting scene. Something like that. And finally, she falls to the ground in tears. They are merely the animals of the forest, as frightened of Snow White as she has been of them. Like a bright sunny day, your cares fade away, and your heart is young. You know, something like that. She decides to clean it up with the help of her animal friends, and she sings something like this. Just whistle while you work. But meanwhile, some distance away, the seven dwarfs are introduced in song as they dig in their underground mine. We dig in our mine the whole day through. And they'll sing something maybe like this, a chord you let us know. Hey ho, hey ho. Now Snow White, having finished her chores, explores the second floor of the house. They decide that whoever is responsible must be upstairs by a bedsheet to be a scary ghost. When all of the dwarfs finally tiptoe into the room, Snow White wakes up. Well, she tells them of her plight and offers to cook and keep house for them if they will let her stay. Meanwhile, Back at the castle, the queen has discovered the trick played on her by the huntsman by asking the magic mirror, who is the fairest? And being told that Snow White is still alive. She hatches a diabolical scheme. She will disguise herself as an ugly old woman and offer Snow White a poisoned apple. An apple with a deadly curse that cannot be broken except by love's first kiss. A potion to change her royal garments into a peddler's cloak. A scream of fright to turn her hair white. A blast of wind to fan her hate. And a thunderbolt to mix it with. She drinks the potion, and detail by detail turns into a cackling old crone. Something like that. They beg Snow White to be careful while they're gone, even Grumpy showing interest in her well-being. To use in baking a pie, begging her to taste it first. She does, and falls to the ground in a dead faint. Amidst thunder and lightning, the dwarves chase the queen up rocky terrain. Screaming, she falls to her death, maybe with two hungry vultures circling down after her. Then we see a page of the storybook again, and it explains that she was so beautiful, even in death, that the dwarves did not have the heart to bury her. But another comes to see Snow White. It is the prince who approaches, and as a farewell gesture, he kisses her. Miraculously, she awakens, and grief turns into joy as the dwarves and animals cheer for Snow White and the prince who has finally come to take her away where they will all live happily ever after. Well, after several exhausting hours of me playing an evil queen, a sweet heroine, a handsome prince, and 7 individual dwarfs, my staff were completely won over. For instance, I met a guy on the train when I was first going out there and making conversation with people. Going to California? Yeah, I'm going out there. And what business you in? And I said, the motion picture business. Oh, is that right? Well, I know somebody in the picture business. What do you do? I said, I make animated cartoons. And he said, oh. It was like saying I sweep up the latrines or something. I don't know why I picked Snow White. It's a thing I remembered as a kid. I saw Marguerite Clark in it in Kansas City. That's when I was a newsboy. They had a big showing for all the newsboys back then, and I went and I saw Snow White. Now my brother Roy and I, we grew concerned about my parents who had been running a rooming house in Portland. Their health wasn't great. Because of the success of Snow White, we could afford to buy them a house in California and hire a housekeeper to help take care of it. So we did that, but unfortunately, the gas heating in the house wasn't properly installed. My mother had complained that the furnace wasn't operating well, and I sent studio repairmen to fix it, but they didn't succeed. On the morning of November 26, 1938, gas fumes spread through their new home. When my father woke up, well, he found my mother's body on the bathroom floor. He passed out himself, trying to carry her to another room. When their housekeeper began to feel dizzy, she rushed to check on them, but she found them both passed out, and she got a neighbor to help her to get them out of the house. My mother, well, it was too late for my mother. Dad survived, but he never got over the tragedy. I don't think I ever got over it either. I'm sorry. But for years afterwards, I hated Snow White because every time I'd make a feature after that, they'd always compare it to it. As the studio was being constructed, work moved ahead on 3 more feature films: Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. And though Pinocchio, which was seen here at the Lorraine Theater last month, did any of you see it? In August 1941, my wife and I, and 15 of my artists, an entourage we called El Grupo, we visited Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. I was asked to make a tour of South America where our characters had become very popular. I initially declined, but I was offered $70,000 in expenses and an advance of up to $50,000 each for 5 cartoons based on material from the tour. rather than release them individually, we combined these South American-themed shorts into 2 package films. You'll remember Saludos Amigos, released in 1943, and that consisted of 4 cartoons loosely joined by 16mm footage of El Grupo. Although the film was well received in North and South America, it was overshadowed by its wilder and more polished successor, The Three Caballeros. And that began with Donald Duck receiving a projector with 3 films about strange birds. Well, while away in South America, I got word that my father had passed away. And then, of course, came the day that changed everything. That was the day war was declared. Oh, that Sunday. I was at home and we got the word that they bombed Pearl Harbor. Later that day, I got a call from the studio manager, and he had been called in turn by the police. He said, "Walt, the Army is moving in on us. They came up and they said they wanted to move in." And I said, "I'd have to call you." And they said, "Call him, but we're moving in anyway." So 500 troops moved into the studio. In an effort to keep our organization together, I had to make a military reserve of the place. We all had to be thumbprinted and cleared by the FBI and so on to work there. And then, as it turned out, the military hired us to produce animated training films. You know, we had one series we called The Rules of the Nautical Road. Thousands and thousands of feet we turned out, done very simply, on what various lights meant, and so on. It was longer than Snow White and Pinocchio combined. These films had to be produced quickly and cheaply, often on budgets of $15,000 or less. And we had spent more on a 7-minute short a decade earlier. Gosh, when you look over the amount of film we produced at this time, it was really amazing. How did we do all that? Well, you know, I guess with the impetus of the war, everybody seemed to come awake. It was kind of like a Rip Van Winkle sort of thing because, well, it was easy before that. And that brings us up to today, December 19th, 1946, and our new film, Song of the South. A film, like in our current times, set in a period right after the country's been through a terrible war. A time in need of love and kindness and lots of laughter. You know, I've been at this business for a long time, and every day something new comes up to battle me and or my studio, but as long as we can get a few laughs out of it, we're happy. When you're blue and feeling low, that's the time to go ho ho. Old man Trouble will leave, I know, when he hears your ho ho ho. Boy, am I in luck. I think about my laughing place, and yuck, 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 yuck. Everybody's got a laughing place to go ho ho. Take a frown, turn it upside down, and you'll find yours, I know, ho ho. Now, I usually don't sing like this. I mean, well, not in front of people. No, really. I don't understand what has come over me today. I think I need to take a break, a vacation. You know, I love bringing my girls to amusement parks. I'm taking the entire family to Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen next month. Have you ever been there? We haven't. Well, that's what an amusement park should be. Safe, clean, and friendly. Now, if ever I was to create such a place, I would. Oh my gosh. Why not? Do you think so?
Yeah.
Is it a good idea? Well, it sometimes just comes to you, you know. Anyway, I can hardly contain myself. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I must now bring this lovely meeting to an end. But one last thing. Ub Iwerks, remember him? Well, he handled special photographic processes on Song of the South. And as you know, Ub had left us, but he's back now, and we're so happy he is. He directed the Skeleton Dance and Steamboat Willie, for goodness sakes. Well, he's very much part of the Disney studio. All the best to you, everyone, and keep an eye out for our film, Make Mine Music, on December 27th and 28th, right here at the Lorraine Theater, and also for Song of the South, when it plays here next spring, because I know you're gonna love both of them. I want to be happy, but I won't be happy till I make you happy too. Life's really worth living when we are mirth giving. I hope I gave some to you. Why am I singing? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I have a few minutes. Maybe you're not interested. Maybe you talk for an hour. I think I've heard everything I need to. But do you have any questions you'd like to ask me? And I could do my best to answer them. If you don't know, I'm Walt Disney. Yes, sir.
Mr. Disney, would you consider your biggest break getting into the business, the job in Missouri when you wrote the animated?
Yes.
Is that what really influenced you on going forward with animation?
Yeah, it focused me right in. I mean, the animated commercials, and I could see that the cartoon making was well, it was very primitive. Yes, indeed, that was, I think, when I think about it, I was just thinking about it today when I read that. That was the time that made, the moment that made all the difference. You know, I was trying to get any work I could as an artist, and that was vague. I just wanted to be an artist. But then I was offered this job creating animated commercials at the Kansas City Slide Company. So I think that was the big jumping off point for me. Because again, as I mentioned earlier before we started today, it was a place that needed attention. It was a place, you know, the film was just beginning back then. You know, my first efforts were silent films, as you all know. Aren't we glad we have talkies now? Aren't you happy about that? Yes. People talk on screen, people sing. They sing better than I do. But yes, sir. And your name?
Jerry.
Jerry, thanks for that question. Yes, Jerry, I think that was a turning point for me. Any other questions?
You said that Mickey Mouse came from an idea when you were traveling across
Yes.
the country. How did you come up with a mouse idea, and why the big ears? Where did that come from?
Well, you know, we had a mouse in our office, and I used to feed him, and I never named him, but I was always taken with the mouse's plight in life. You know what I mean? I mean, the mouse is chased, the mouse is killed, but I find them to be very cute looking in spite of their troublesomeness. But no, you know, we had the rabbit and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and it was really such an emotional thing to lose Oswald. We put so much work into that, and I just think that I just thought of the next adorable rodent I could think of, and Mickey Mouse came out. But we did have a mouse. He popped out every day, and I always got to know him. So that's probably why I jumped to the idea of the mouse. But aren't we glad I didn't call it Mortimer? Aren't you glad? Mickey makes much more sense, and Lily's always right. She always knows better than me what to name things. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed listening to me today. I'm not used to this sort of thing. I'm not an actor, and as you could hear, I'm not a singer. But I've never sang in front of people before, so I don't know what possessed me today to do that. Do you forgive me? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you, Alex. And Merry Christmas to you all, and don't stop watching the movies. They're there for you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.